Hi, my name's Whitney Jones, and I want to show you an exercise for the experienced or a step-by-step for the beginner on watercolor of painting a bird. This bird was just taken outside my front room window, and it is a dark-eyed junco, commonly known as a snowbird. Really interesting little guy to watch. So let's paint. First of all, I have my reference material, and I worked on composition. I liked how this was laid out. This little guy, some pine needles bleeding, and I think we can do something good with this. So my materials are a 140-pound watercolor paper, and I prefer arches often when I can find it. And also, this is a slightly smaller sheet of watercolor paper, slightly less expensive, also 140 pound. What I like to do is set up my palette, mix in the palette, but then test it on a sheet similar to what I'm painting on. And that way I can get some idea of the blends. One of the things I'm attempting to do is work with a very limited palette. So let's move to the materials, further the paints I'm using. First one is a burnt umber. That's a deep brown, and it works very well with my primary detail color, which is Payne's Gray. There's some beautiful blending you can be doing with these two. Next is, for a little bit of brightness, my ultramarine. And this has kind of a green shade to it and is really nice for accenting. It brightens the picture considerably. Then, last but not least, I've got the cadmium yellow pale. And this is, again, almost more of an accent, but I use it in mixing to lighten up and liven up the colors just a little bit. But that's the palette, just those four colors. Then for brushes, I'm using two round tips, one fairly small for detail work, and then a number 3. This is a Princeton brush, and I've been happy with that. You can use what is convenient, what you may have on hand. And then I've got a number 8 filbert, or a flat brush, very flexible, soft bristle, and really nice for larger mass areas on the drawing. Okay, next, I will sketch the bird, and I've pre-done this to shorten the time so we can get to the painting. So there's my sketch of the Junco. I try and keep that fairly simple. I want to do most of the detail work with the watercolor and less with the pencil. This, by the way, is sketched on just typewriter paper, about a 24 pound, very thin, because I then want to take that sketch and transfer it to my watercolor paper. So what I do is graphite just on the back, cover it thoroughly. The more you cover, the better your detail when you do the transfer. And then flip that over, trace your drawing, and when you're through with tracing that on, you get a very light but image, and I hope you can see that, of the bird. Enough for placement and enough detail that you can paint with it. So, with that being said, let's get on with the painting. I'm going to mix, first of all, just a very light wash with the ultramarine blue, and that will be mostly water. And I'm putting just a touch of color in that so that I can see where I have water on the bird. And I'm not doing a wet on wet on the overall. I'm just basically working initially on the bird itself first. That tends to give us a focal point on the subject rather than on the overall, which I prefer in this case. So I've got my water poured. I need to put in my ultramarine blue, and it's maybe a little bit slow, but I'm working without editing. I want anyone following this to have a legitimate feel for how long this takes and how simple it really is. So let's find my palette sheet. Okay, that's about what I want. Let me show you what I've got here so far. It's just my water and the ultramarine blue. And we'll work with that for just a minute and get the main body of our bird saturated with a pretty good amount of water. I'm going to avoid his eye. I think, again, if I don't do a wash on that and come back and work on it individually at some point, it's going to give me just a much better detail and emphasis. And really, as with portrait work, the eye is extremely important. And I just want the emphasis to be right. I'm using my cloth almost as a painting tool. This is like a car shop cloth towel. And I like these because they're absorbent, but they also can be used to blend your colors, and I work with it almost like a palette. Okay, a little bit more work here on the wing. Some water on the tail. Okay, and I think that will suffice. Okay. Now, in watercolor, you generally work from light to dark, but I'm pretty sure that I want my details and my darks on the head, and I don't want to overwork it. I want them to be fair, as natural and kind of the spontaneous look you get with watercolor. So I'm going to start to lay in just a little bit of my ultramarine blue, and I've got also my burnt umber, and I'm using, you can hardly see that. This is the area that I want a little darker. Not gonna fuss with it much. I kind of prefer the water to do all the work. So let's lighten that a little bit more. And there. And you'll see what this does that is difficult to control, but you kind of know what's going to happen. If you add the water after you put down some color, you get some really nice gradients with a very subtle edge. And I like that quite a bit. Okay, so that is just a touch of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and now I'm going to lay in just a little bit of my Payne's gray. And for this, because this is detail, more detail, I'm drying off my brush just a little bit, and not much water. This is almost virgin on dry brush, but I want to lay in and still have enough water on the head of the bird that we get just a little bit of blending there on it. That's what I'm after. Missing the eye. And just on these Juncos, the snowbirds, they have a kind of a dark hood top of the head. and the males are more pronounced. This one is actually a female, I believe. And so we have that, but it's not nearly as black or dark appearing as the male. Start to put in placement of the beak. There'll be some shadow down here, so do just a little bit of color in there. Okay, now I like where that's going. I'm going to continue on down the body of the bird with a little brighter ultramarine blue and my burnt umber. Mixing that. Again, I'm going to try that on my card. That's nice. That's almost verging on black, but not quite as muddy. Okay, so looking at my reference, I can see that this bird has some browns in this area and it's still quite dark. So we'll lay in that different tone. Okay, that's not bad. And I'll take it down to, there's sort of an area before the main part of the wing begins. And I think that's, okay. That's what I want. And I can add just a bit more color in that. Yeah. Drying off my brush and doing just a straight wash of the burnt umber. Don't want a lot of color, but I want it to start to lighten up so that there's, yeah, definite. Now, I can, I think I'm going to work to the tail, let this area dry a bit, because I want some definition in there when that dries. And then it's a little bright, so I'm going to take that down. Okay, so working on the tail now. The tail, we can go back to quite a bit more pigment. Probably going to use more Payne's gray, a little bit of the ultramarine blue, and a little bit of burnt umber, but and bring the burnt umber much darker up underneath the wing in the front. Okay, here we go. And I'm still treating this a lot like a wash, so we've got that part. We can go down here, and I think, and this is open to kind of what your preference is, but I do like just a swash. I don't like to overwork these when I can get away with it. I like what I've got there. I'm going to add just a little more pigment up here. That's nice. And draw it down. Okay. It's working out. I'm doing kind of a layering here. That's called a glaze. And if you put down a color, in this case, kind of a swash, because I want this to have a bit of a loose feel, especially a little less detail as we go out. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that. I can add just a little more dark above that tail area. Let it run some, dry off my brush and pick up some of that. There we go. It's just a nice light and dark. In sketching, a thick and thin is often more interesting than a straight, accurate line. And that's what I'm working on going for here. Okay. Start to add just a little more detail. Get some more form in here and suggest the feathering. Nothing definite. And I'm not overworking again. I'm just, okay, I think that this area of the head, I can go quite a bit darker. There's actually quite a bit of darker area in front of and behind the eye that I'd like to lay in now. So I'm moving to Payne's Gray. A little more pigment this time. There. And okay, and you can, when you're doing this detail work, control a bit more, and I'm still leaving the eye till everything's quite dry. Okay, lower part of the beak. I may not do a lot more on the beak than what I've got right there. Like that. I'll let that dry for a bit and start working. There's quite a bit of the lighter brown. So this is where I will work with my burnt umber and the cadmium yellow, lighten that up, lay in a wash, and start to get some color into this painting. Okay, let's begin that. So, there is, now it's a little bit brighter than I want. I'm going to tone that down. Let's try our swatch sheet again. Okay. Yeah, I think that's more what I would like. Okay. So, and again, just not overworking anything on this. Because this is a lighter area where I want some depth, I'm using the ultramarine blue, not any Payne's Gray, so we get a definite break in that color. Okay. And, okay, I like that. Okay, right in this area underneath the bird, I think I can go with a very light wash of Payne's Gray and then feather it and go to a white. And I can't really paint white, but I can outline and leave a white above the outline, and I will attempt to go that route. Okay. These lines are almost non-existent in line work. So I am sketching with my brush. And that may be all I want for right now. I can add wee bit more color in here so that your eye picks up on the form, that tail. Okay, and this tail ends kind of somewhat squared off and quite dark. And I believe we can go ahead and do that now. A little more pigment. And a bit more. Okay. And we're kind of glazing this just a bit. And I want a dark feather here. Okay. And we can start to lay in detail now in this area. All right. Now I want to glaze a little bit, knock some of this back. And so I'll be using ultramarine blue and just kind of laying in some broader areas. That's nice. A little bit here. And then a bit more pigment in this area. And I'm allowing this watercolor to spread a little bit. I like that effect. All right. That's nice. I can use some of that, I believe, up here now. Okay. Now I'm going to let this dry just a little bit, and then I want to get just a little bit of feathering, a brighter color in the breast area. And then we'll move up to the beak and the eye. Cleaning my brush off as I go, and it would be a good idea, if you haven't yet, to also get some clean water in the reservoirs or in your cup to keep the painting from getting too muddy. All right, let's see if I can, a little bit of the burnt umber mixed with my cadmium yellow. Okay. All right, here we go. Now use just a wash of water to spread that out, and then lift some of the pigment out. A little more wash, and draw a little bit of this down into that wing. So reduce that contrast just a bit more. Now, I can come back in. There is an area up above in here that I can add just a little bit of, suggest some feathering. Okay, I like that. And going to lay some more over, glaze a little bit more in this area. Okay. Now what you see here is a bit of, just a little bit of straight pigment, dry brush. To break up that mass. Okay, and just a little bit of the same going through here. It's just a nice, loose effect that gives. I don't have a solid line in any of this. I'm letting the viewer's eye fill an awful lot of that in. Okay. All right, I'm going back to my mid-sized round brush and do a little bit more of the area on the head. A little darker there. There. Okay, I want to let that dry. I'm going to define a little bit of this better, this area of the breast on the bird. And that will be, again, just very light wash. Okay, now on this leg, again, more suggesting the leg than actually painting it. All right. I don't want to overwork this, so at this point, I need a little more depth of color in this. So I'm going to do that. I'm using now my larger brush. Keep that relatively simple. Mixing burnt umber and my Payne's gray. And I want to just a little more pigment. Okay, that's more of what I'm after. Good. All right. Now, I'm going to lay in this branch, and that will be almost, again, moving toward a dry brush. And I want to do the Payne's gray and quite a bit of burnt umber. And then I've got my brush loaded. I'm going to take just a little bit of that off. See what that looks like here. Just a bit more. Okay. All right. Now the brush, the branch I want to treat almost as a calligraphy stroke. So it'll be not a lot of fussing and just, let's see what we get. Now lighten that just a little because I'm getting into a lighter area. All right, I think that's good. Okay, I'm gonna work a little bit now on a wash for the pine needles. And that will be the cadmium yellow, and ultramarine blue for my basic green. That will need to be probably quite a bit more yellow than blue. And once I get a good medium green, and by medium, here's what I'm working with so far. Okay, that's a middle tone. I think I can work with that. Then I'll add just some of the burnt umber green, a little more of the blue. Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to lay a bit of a wash down, I think, up on the top here. Oh, that's nice. Take a little bit of color out of some of that. Okay. And now I think I like what's going on there. I will just do a much lighter, which means a lot more water, to do my pine needles in that area. Here we go. Oh, good. We get happy mistakes like that quite often. Part of the reason I enjoy working watercolor so much is seeing what it brings to the table that you never quite intended. And I did a little bit of research on pine trees, and this actually, we're representing not a pine tree, but a fir. The pine trees tend to have groups of needles coming off the branch in 3s and 5s, where a fir will have needles all over, just up and down the branch. Okay. With a little bit darker underneath the bird. There's shadow, a lot of shadow going on there. And begin some of these. wash, primarily the burnt umber. Need a little more definition on the branch. Then I can draw off a little bit more on the pine needles. You can go for quite some time with these pine needles, and I think I'll probably wrap this in just a minute and get back to the eye of the bird. There are a lot of needles in this area, which need a little more defining. Okay, good. Now, let's work on some detail up on the bird's face just a bit more. Okay, I am going to outline. Let's see, I want to do the outer part of that eye. And I think that's about right. To dry. Now, while it's drying, I think that I want just a bit more suggestion of pine, but really just some dark to define this leg. that's good for that. Now I'm going to my smallest brush and just going to define this eye a little bit more and some of the other details I want to pop a little bit more. There needs to be a highlight left in the eye, so work on that. All right, just about there. A bit more definition, a couple of spots here. All right, and now let that sit for just a minute, and then I want to just put in a very light wash in the background to soften that harshness out. And I'm going to use primarily just a very light wash. Ultramarine blue. We'll see where that goes. And more water than anything. Okay. So we can go that lower half. Really, I just want to warm that up a little bit. Just a little more color. Which tends to tie our bird together. All right, I think that about completes the branches, the needles we've got that. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please contact me on the email and let me know if you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you.